Sorry for this late delay. We were just getting our audio system back up and working. So we will start the Community Infrastructure Services Committee. We have 4 consent items. Will somebody move the consent items? Moved by Councillor Ioannidis. We have a few people in the queue. Councillor Gazzola?
I have a question on 3 and 4.
3 and 4?
Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Fernandez?
I have a question on 1.
Councillor Yunetsky?
1 and 3.
All right, so we're pulling out everything but number 2. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Let's deal with number 2 first. It's been moved. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay, we'll start with item number 1. Councillor Fernandez?
Yeah, I just wanted an understanding on 1-3. It says exemption from emergency access policy. I guess I'm trying to, maybe you can give me a little bit more background. Am I understanding that we only need 1 access point on this because it's not greater than 150 meters for fire and emergency?
Katie?
So through you, Madam Chair. So the emergency services policy requires that they have 2 accesses, and so what they're proposing to do on this site is to have what's called a divided highway approach. So they do have 2 accesses. They're immediately parallel. So each half of that driveway, there's a boulevard down the center, and each half acts as its own fire route. So that instead of having a second driveway, because the frontage is so varied given the topography, it's more practical, and it serves the same purpose, having the driveway, the one driveway divided in half so that fire truck could drive on either side of it.
Okay, and what is the length of this entire roadway then?
The entire roadway is probably about 300 meters long to the end, not quite, a little less, 280, I believe. So it separates about halfway down, and then it continues on. So once you get past where the divided highway part is. So the Chief Fire Prevention Officer has reviewed the proposal and is in support of the proposed solution.
Is this the first time we've done this?
We have done exemptions to the emergency services policy before, I believe. This is the first time I think that we've taken this approach that I'm aware of.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Yunetsky?
Yeah, in regard to this emergency access policy, I was the one that actually created it back many years ago. But on this one, the total length you say is just over 300 meters? Or is it longer? Because it looks pretty long.
So through you, Madam Chair, I'm looking more closely at the site plan. It is fairly long, but I believe that it is within about 300 meters. So it's about 150 meters to, I'm sorry, the plan that's attached is quite small. The building that's labeled as 1200 Lackner Place, that main entrance is about 150 meters, and then from that point to building 1300 is an additional 110 meters.
So it's 160 meters from what? From the street to the end of the divided portion?
Until approximately the end of the divided portion, yes.
Okay, because this is the first time I see the divided portion in and out, and that's good. I like it. I think it's a good solution. And so the balance is less than 150 or more than 100?
It's less than 150.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, yes, it's less than 150, the balance. So it's less than 300 in total.
Okay, that answers the question. Thank you.
Okay, that's all the questions on number 1. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Item number 3. Parking on our adults. Councillor Gazzola?
No, I just wondered how this got here and why we're only dealing with the period from January to March.
Mr. Carmichael?
Yes, through you, the Chair. This issue was identified by a property owner who raised the concern, and the concern is only existent during the winter months when the snow buildup narrows the roadway and it restricts their access for their trucks to get in and out. We ended up meeting on site with both the property owner that raised it and the property owner across the street that's immediately impacted, and both are in support of our proposal.
Yeah, I didn't think there was much, any opposition, but I just wondered, sometimes you get heavy snow November, December, so I didn't understand why it was just the first 3 months of the year.
Through the chair, that matches the remainder of winter parking prohibitions we commonly put in across the city. They're generally in place January to the end of March, and that's reflective of December is Christmas season and more restrictive parking. We typically like to keep it a little more open for residents to have visitors around Christmas time.
That's a good answer, but there are no visitors here. That's okay. I'm not opposed to what's happening.
Councillor Yunitsky?
Yeah, similar questioning. I see we're only dealing now with a small portion, 26 meters in length, and 2 property owners were notified. I thought this is standard practice, notify all the property owners in Ardelt in that portion from Hanson back to Lennox. Lewis?
Through the chair, because the proposed parking prohibition was limited to such a small area, we just dealt with the immediately impacted property owners on either side. It's quite a distance down to the next property owners, and it really shouldn't have any impact on the other properties in Ardelt.
Okay. And I see your point there. Okay, thank you.
Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And number 4. Councillor Zola?
I would like this split into 2 votes. I don't understand why we need to delegate the authority to deal with this. It only comes up once every 4 years. I feel we're delegating more and more authority, putting more and more work on our staff's shoulders when we can, once every 4 years, look after it ourselves. So that's my only concern. So I'd like you to deal with the 2 issues separately.
So paragraph 1 and paragraph 2?
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
Paragraph 1 and paragraph 2 in the...
Yes.
Okay. Councillor Marsh?
Yeah, I was just wondering if there's been any consideration about, or any discussion at staff level about the high-speed rail route, and if that's going to affect the park lands or trails that are along the hydro corridor.
I'm just waiting for something. There we go. Ms. McGoldrick?
So through you, Chair, and in speaking with my colleague to the right of me, I understand that the province is going through an EA right now. And so as part of the EA process, the city will be evaluating its interests related to lands, but at this point we haven't had those discussions. Okay, so the community obviously values the trails that they use along this corridor, but also equally would value, I'm sure many would value the high-speed rail even if it had to go through there, but it would be good to see if there would be ways to have connections despite the high-speed rail route. Ideally it wouldn't cut through all these trails and make it such a negative impact. Anyway, that's just a comment.
Thank you. Councillor Singh?
Thank you, Madam Chair. On item, so the second paragraph for the delegated authority to the CEO's office, I'm for allowing for proper debate and discussion to happen with council, but would we ever seen a scenario where something would come out of agreement such as this, or I'm assuming there's not or has not been changes in the past, and that's why staff are recommending it to be delegated to staff.
Mr. Chapman?
Through the chair, I believe it was the city solicitor's recommendation to include that, but seeing as she's not here, I'll speak to it. And if you look at the last paragraph of the report, I think that speaks to the issue that this renewal does not change the original terms. It needs to be amended to add additional lands as hydro corridors are extended, and so those are fairly routine matters. I think our track record is pretty good that when there are substantial issues that require council direction, we bring it forward regardless. This would just allow the routine amendments and extensions to be dealt with administratively.
Okay, that's what I thought. My another question is related to those amendments. I see that we do try to make some usage of this corridor with trails, and I was glad to see in one section there's a winter rink as well. If a proposal were from the community to come in between these agreements, do we still have flexibility on that, or typically it has to wait until the agreement comes back again before any amendments could be made?
Through you, Madam Chair.
Oh, just one second. Go ahead.
Yes, we generally, the current agreement speaks predominantly to trail infrastructure in the hydro corridor, with the exception of the one skating rink that we did add this year as part of an amendment to the new agreement. Generally speaking, what I find is that as recreational uses like that come up, we would approach Hydro One and engage them. They have safety protocols. They have all sorts of due diligence that they need to go through, and we would allow them to do that, and then it would be a discourse back and forth.
No, I understand that. I just wanted to make sure that there is that flexibility in between these agreements coming for delegated authority. Okay, thank you.
I just have a quick question with regards to maintenance of these lands. Is it our responsibility or Hydro to maintain these lands?
Through you, Madam Chair. The agreement allocates the maintenance responsibility to the city for all the lands that we have recreational use on.
And then what is our policy? This is probably for a different time, but what is our policy on that? How often do we maintain?
Yes. We have two crews dedicated. It's a flail mowing crew that we engage. At the cutting frequency, again, it varies severely based on the weather conditions, but we aim around 4 weeks.
Okay. That's probably a discussion for another time, so I'll just leave it at that. Okay, that's all the questions. Thank you. Okay, so recorded vote on the second part. So we are just dealing with the first paragraph on this report on page 4-1. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And recorded vote's been asked for paragraph 2. Voting's open. Those in favor? Those opposed? That carries. All right, we are now going to get into our discussion items, which our first one is Vanier Drive bike lanes. It's my understanding, Mr. Carmichael, you're just here to answer questions? Yes. So we're going to hear from the delegation first then. Leanne Gibson. Welcome, Ms. Gibson. You have 5 minutes to make your presentation.
I see the clock. Well, first of all, I wanted to thank you for the opportunity to represent and speak on behalf of the residents of Vanier Drive regarding the proposed expansion slotted for the spring of 2019. This was to include the inclusion of bicycle lanes. Now, the majority of the residents of Vanier Drive are opposed to this for the following reasons. The proposal to join the via bike lanes, the Wilson Trails to the Iron Horse Trail at the crossover bridge on Boniface Avenue, forces riders to pass through two very busy school sections. A safer option would be to have them dip around Vanier Drive, which the city has already deemed as a very busy street, onto Massey, and that would allow for a safer travel for your cyclists. If this route was so sought after by the 8% minority of avid cyclists, why haven't they been using it already? We do not see many cyclists. We see the odd one now and again. There have been absolutely zero incidents of cyclist accidents on Vanier Drive. Vanier has shared its space with motorists, pedestrians, and cyclists for 6 decades. We don't see how this is required for us to continue. The city has admitted that the inclusion of bicycle lanes is part of a larger ideal of if you build it, they will come. It should be more likely to be stated, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Or if it's not broken, Why fix it? Bike lanes are used for a limited number of months per year, but the residents of Vanier Drive have to live with these changes for 365 days of the year. For the inclusion of a sidewalk on the odd-numbered side of the street. The majority of residents are against this for the following reasons. This is a substantial loss of property value. I alone am looking at $30,000. This was estimated by 2 independent real estate brokerage houses, and I am one of obviously many who are looking at this kind of loss. Loss of old trees. I have a 60-year-old tree on my property. Several of us also do. Now, the city arborist has said that there will be little to no risk to these trees. However, an independent arborist that I consulted said that, although immediate damage may not be noticeable, it may take time, but death and destruction can happen, especially if hydrovacking is used, and that is what I am understanding is the proposal of the excavation of this area. I draw attention to actually a recent post on Facebook, I know, that says, our tree outside of work. Last year, the city of Cambridge added a sidewalk and cut back the roots of this majestic tree, only to have it fall down in the wind today. Posted a picture on image was the tree falling into the middle of the road. The loss of personal parking space. We are looking at the loss of 2.3 meters, 7.5 feet, or half a car length per driveway. Now, although we're facing tickets then if you're parking in the driveway because you're overhanging a sidewalk, it's a ticketable offense. Elderly residents and or their guests are now expected to walk further in any weather condition to visit. Not only that, but a lot of our residents do rely on CCAC. They have PSWs, community services coming in. Now these people now have to haul equipment and walk further in any weather condition in order to visit their client. In a recent RENS report, for new development, resident private parking was a concern to the participants of that survey. The city has determined the loss of 40 on-street parking spaces. This does not include what we would be losing privately. The vast majority of the residents have raised their children and grandchildren on this street without 2 sidewalks. Road safety is a very, very important parental priority. There are crosswalks at each major intersection. Children always walk on the side where the school is. We rarely see them running across the street unsafely. We fear that the inclusion of a sidewalk will increase this, will encourage this. Plus, we have the parking situation and the visibility that parking can create. Why do I know that this will be an issue? I don't get kids for Halloween. The other side of the street does. We have tended to our homes with love and care, invested time, money, and sweat into the landscape and keep them beautiful and a place for our family and friends to enjoy for the past 60 years. Why can Vanier not be grandfathered in when it comes to sidewalks and for the bicycle lanes? With the swipe of a hand and efforts of a simple bulldozer, these efforts are gone. Road repair and reconstruction is something that we expect. That's exactly what we expect our tax dollars to go for. What we don't expect is to be left feeling like renters and that our landlord is a bully. This is a very difficult time. It's very dramatic. We are all concerned that the city will do what a vast majority of residents in Kitchener, not even dealing with this issue, feel, that the city will do exactly what it wants to do. When it comes to sidewalks, you build them, those children will come. Remember, please, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. If you just want to wait, there's at least one question for you.
Please.
Councillor Gazzola?
Yeah. Yes, thank you. I want to thank you for coming in and expressing your thoughts. Are you representing a number of the residents on
Yes,
the
I am.
street? There were a number of residents that didn't reply. If they were given another opportunity, do you think that the number would increase?
I honestly believe that it would, sir, only because when the survey was originally released to us, we were unaware of exactly how much we were talking about. So once the news got released at the public meeting in March as to exactly what the residents were facing, a great number of opinions changed momentarily.
Are you on the east side or the west side? Can I ask that?
Yes. Just not specific address.
I can't ask your address, or then I'd have to shoot
No,
you.
and that's fine, and I'll be honest, east or west I'm unsure of, but I'm on the odd-numbered side. I'm on the side that is proposed to be getting the sidewalk.
Okay, so you're on the west side.
And my apologies, the residents of Vanier were told that this meeting was happening at 7 p.m. tonight, and that's why there's nobody here, because nobody could make it because of the time change.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There will be a 7 o'clock meeting for our council meeting. Is it 2 weeks? Next week, 1 week.
Yes, I fear that was the confusion in timing, which I was told.
Yeah, okay. Councillor Fernandez?
Thank you. So you mentioned that you don't have any children walking on your side. You don't have any kids coming down your side during Halloween. But do you not feel that having accessibility for all people on both sides of the street is a fair, reasonable request?
I think what it comes down to, Madam, is that we've been doing it for 60 years. The residents who are elderly, who are original to that specific area, also don't want one. They don't feel it's necessary. When the safety precautions are there for sidewalks and crossing, they are there.
So one minute you're saying that you're fear that the kids are going to cross from one side of the road to the other because there's a sidewalk, but you're also saying that that the residents have always crossed the road to go to the sidewalk side. So I'm a little bit confused as to where your concern is, because you're still saying that you're concerned either way, whether you stay as one sidewalk or if you have two sidewalks, that people are going to cross over the street to use.
At this, we do not see children randomly running across the street. There's no reason to. They have a sidewalk. It's safe. They've been taught. Stay on the sidewalk.
So your sidewalk is, if I'm recollect correctly, is the same side as Rockaway Mennonite School, correct?
Rockaway Mennonite, I believe, is a little smaller. We're Rockaway Public.
Sorry, Rockaway Public. I apologize.
That's okay. And we have Montessori Sunrise, which is the private school just around the corner on Boniface.
Yeah.
So what you're having is you're having your cyclists come into this large section of vehicles, comings and goings, and children, whereas if you went down Massey, you'd reach the same destination in a much quieter fashion, because there are no schools. They're coming below the schools as opposed to through them.
Yep. Okay. You mentioned parking spaces, and in the survey that was done by our staff, I noticed that at a couple of different times there was never more than 3 cars parked on the.
You should come around our place at Christmas. We have such a diversity of cultures and religions that live on that street. So they're celebrating all year long. And so depending on when this was being viewed, we have a lot more than 3 cars being parked at any one time.
Every day?
That street can be quite busy at times.
But every day you're seeing like the full street being full of cars?
Of course not.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Schneider? Sorry.
Seelock. You mentioned that currently there's a lot of elderly residents on the street and they don't see the need for the sidewalks. But part of what we have to do here on council is look ahead, and as these elderly residents move out, there'll be younger families with children moving in. So how do we address safety issues for them in the years coming?
A number of the residents have also indicated what the frontage on the odd side of the street is shorter. We've already got less frontage than the other side of the street. So now basically what you're doing is you're condensing any play area for children. You're putting their play area that little bit much closer. So that's the biggest reason why people don't want it. And I realize the foresight into looking down the road as to whether or not sidewalks would be beneficial. There are a number of sidewalks in these old communities that don't have 2 sidewalks, but what they do have is beauty. Beautiful old trees that are majestic. There's no way that there's going to be construction, and there's just no place for more construction in our area. Cyclists are not biking to work because we don't have those kinds of buildings and employers where cyclists as a mode of transportation is required. That's not where we are. We're in a quiet, beautiful, old residential area. that everybody likes just the way it is. And the property, like I say, property, we don't have as much. The other side that's already been developed, they've already got, they had more frontage. A number of the residents were pointing out that that's what they were told when they bought, was that there would never be excavation or expansion on our side because we had less frontage. Now we're going to have even less.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Gazzola, is yours another question or of staff? No, I have questions of staff. Okay. That's all the questions we have for you, Ms. Gibson. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate
We're going to ask questions of staff now, and then we will vote on the matter. Councillor Gazzola?
I'm going to start right off by asking what would be the impact of deferring this issue in order to recanvassing the neighborhood?
Through you, Madam Chair, we're in the middle of design right now. We're waiting for this issue to be resolved before we can continue to the next step. We have a public meeting planned for the fall of 2018, so this fall, to present a design. So we have a little bit of time here to work with this, so a small delay is not going to be significant.
Yeah, I'm asking...
One second, Councillor Gazzola. Mr. Cronkite would like to answer as well.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. Well, I think part of the rationale for deferral in terms of additional information, I understand where you're going with that, but the one thing to keep in mind when we're talking about those that are directly affected is that 61% of those directly affected did respond to the initial survey. So in terms of surveys and response rate, that's actually a fairly high response rate. If we were to reconduct that survey, I'm not entirely sure that we could get that number to go up. So we do have a fairly good response rate, at least from those that are directly affected at this point.
Okay. Did you have another question?
I have several more. Yeah.
Go ahead.
That time is going.
If you want to know what, I'll give you an extra minute.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. From what you're saying, though, a deferral, say, to our next committee or council meeting would work.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I'm not sure if these questions are for you or for Mr. Cronkite. The impact study shows that there have been 5 accidents on the street, but in the last couple of years, what does SMV stand for? I took it as small monetary value. Is that right?
Single motor vehicle.
Oh, single motor vehicle. Oh, so what does that mean? Single motor vehicle unattended.
Through you, Madam Chair, essentially, generally speaking, when it's a single motor vehicle that's unattended, it means that a parked car was struck. So generally speaking, the owner of the parked car reports the collision rather than the vehicle that would have struck that car.
Okay, so there's been no incidences of any injury to any people.
Through you, Madam Chair, there's no discernible serious collision history along Vanier Drive that staff are concerned with.
Okay, so that's what I wanted to drive at. So that's not an issue. Okay. What area, when you look at the area, you get up into 820 residents, what is that area what's covered there?
Through you, Madam Chair, as part of the sidewalk infill policy that was established in 2015, one of the primary components of that policy was to ensure that we're not only surveying those that are directly affected, so those residents of Vanier Drive, but also surveying those that are indirectly affected and that could potentially use that sidewalk if it existed. So that resident total that you're talking about there is everybody that's within 400 meters of this section of sidewalk. That would be, and keep in mind that's a walking distance rather than just as the bird flies.
So give me the name of some streets that were all of Boniface Ave, Kipling Ave, would they all be Highview, Cortland?
Through you, Madam Chair, the cutoff essentially would be Cortland. I mean, you would survey, in terms of the 400-meter radius, I don't have it in front of me exactly, But you would survey a number of streets. So you would get into Sybert and Walton as well. You would hit Boniface and Massey and a number of those other side streets, again, that, people could potentially use a sidewalk if it existed. 400 meters in terms of linear walking distance is roughly a 5-minute walk.
Okay. What is the cost of putting a sidewalks in? What's the cost of this project if we just continue with conditions as they are now?
Mr. Allen?
Through the chair, sidewalk costs about $100 a linear meter to install. So we're talking about 450 meters of new sidewalk, so about $45,000.
Does everything to put in the included in putting the sidewalk is all the bicycle lanes and all of that, right? And the cutting back on the properties and reimbursing people for any harm that's done to their property and new trees and all of that. So is that all covered under the $45,000?
Essentially, and we're using unit prices from previous contracts, so this has not been priced as a job yet, but that's our best guess is about $45,000.
That'll cover everything else.
Sorry, through the chair, that's simply the cost of sidewalk installation and any related work to that.
Yeah, I'm trying to ascertain what would happen if you just replace the road work and leave the properties the way they are now. What difference in the price of that contract will it make?
So through the chair, it's a complex question because you're talking about bike lanes as well that are being added to the new job.
Well, that's part of it, yeah, but that's what we're doing. So what is the cost of doing that?
Through you, Madam Chair, we have not worked out the cost of those additions. I know the sidewalk cost just from experience, but we're talking about a unique example here with bike lanes and other factors that I don't have a figure for.
And that's fine, but these are things we should know when we're going down this path of converting everything for the cyclists. So.
Okay, well, that's all your questions?
Yeah, I did have a couple more, but I'm going to ask for a deferral. The reason I'm asking for deferral too is that there was only 14% of the whole area surveyed that responded. So that's really when you have 14% that seem to control what in the people that are directly affected by it, that has the greatest impact. There you had only 20% were in favor, which would mean 80% were not in favor. So
okay.
So
you're going to ask for a deferral?
I'm going to ask for a deferral for until not the May 8th council meeting, but the council meeting after that, and I'm not sure when it is. So.
I think there's one at the end of May. No? I don't have a calendar in front of me.
Through the chair, the standing committee meeting is May 28th, and the next available council meeting is June the 11th.
Okay, well, I would be asking for a deferral till then.
So until May 28th, so it comes back to committee, or you want it to come straight?
No, I would let it come right back to council on the 11th.
Sure. Go ahead.
Sorry, Councillor Zola, could you just clarify what it is you're looking for staff to do between now and then?
I'd like to have another circulation of information from the whole neighborhood.
Okay, Mr. Carmichael.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. In order for staff to execute another survey, which I don't anticipate any different results, by the way, it would take us beyond the time for us to get back to that late May meeting or early June. We need to give the residents at least 3 weeks to respond. Staff have to report. We have to meet clerks' deadlines. I would suggest, if that's the recommendation, that we come back to the June meeting.
Did you come back to the June meeting?
The June 20-something meeting. I don't remember the date. It's like the 25th or something.
What if council
25th.
insisted that you give it a try to hit the June the 11th meeting? Do you think that's
Through the
possible?
chair,
Is it possible?
I would have less confidence in getting the response rate that you're looking for.
So are we going with the 25th or the 11th, Councillor Gazzola, for deferral?
I guess I have to go to the 25th.
Okay, a couple more questions. Councillor Fernandez?
Yes. The delegation was talking about the frontage of these properties. Do we have an understanding of what the frontage of some of these properties are? Are they 30, 40 feet? Are they 20 feet? What I'm hearing is that the concern about loss of parking, and I just want to know what the loss of frontage is and real estate value as well.
Mr. Krongate?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes. We've taken an analysis in terms of a schematic that would give us an idea of the parking that would be lost. Now, all of the properties that are there, they all have parking currently. Some of them, there is a total of 14 potential parking spaces that are lost in driveways along this stretch. Now, keeping in mind that that's taking many of these driveways from a 4-car driveway to a 2-car driveway, there are some instances, and I believe it's a handful, maybe 2 or 3 instances where it's going from, looks like 4 instances, where it's going from a 2-car driveway to a single-car driveway.
Okay.
But generally speaking, most of these properties have a fairly wide frontage. It's not the width of the frontage that's an issue, but rather the depth of the home that's set back.
The depth. And if there was an amendment to our parking on the apron bylaw, would that resolve some of that concern?
Excuse me. Through you, Madam Chair, no, I don't anticipate that would solve the issue here. The apron wouldn't be, in terms of the overall width of the apron, it wouldn't, I don't anticipate it to be sufficient enough to host a car parallel to the roadway.
Okay. The suggestion by the delegation was to use Massey, and in looking at a map, it certainly looks like Massey could be an option. Is that the area in which we were planning on putting the sidewalk, or were we putting the sidewalk? So Massey comes out, it really is like a crescent, and then it connects back up through Erie back onto Vanier. This is really for bike lanes that we're talking about here.
Through you, Madam Chair, yes. The suggestion of Massey is for the installation of a bike route rather than encompassing it on Vanier Drive. It is worth noting that in terms of sidewalk infill along Vanier, there is sidewalk on both sides of Vanier Drive for a good chunk, basically west of Kipling. East of Kipling. West of is where we're looking at the installation of sidewalk on one side. So this really does complete a connection in terms of between what's existing and what doesn't exist yet. The cycling facilities and the concept of using Massey is something that staff did consider. But the one thing that we need to be cognizant of is that there is an ion station just east of this location along Cortland Avenue. So what we're trying to do is make sure that when we're looking at these facilities, we're providing the most direct link possible. By providing those direct links, you're going to encourage use that much greater, as opposed to creating more of a circuitous route, and then it's not as desirable.
Okay, so just because I'm looking at a map on my BlackBerry, which is not very sufficient. Okay, well, thank you, Councillor Zola. No, it's okay.
Do you want to put it on the overhead so we
Yeah,
can
that's a
all
good
see it?
idea, actually. Yes, please. While this is going on the overhead, the delegation was also talking about her concern of trees. And we heard that with I'm going to have the street incorrect, but it's just before you get to the underpass off of Weaver Street. There's a small road that we were planning, we were going to do some work, and there were some trees that were of concern. If you can remember that particular discussion, I can't think of the name of that small street. It was a connection to a trail.
Sean's Lane.
Sean's Lane, thank you. And there was a lot of concern about saving of the trees. How are we able to protect the trees from destruction on this road? And they're pretty stately.
Through you, Madam Chair, I can only kind of give you a little bit of qualifiable information here. I can't quantitatively tell you, but according to the city's arborist, there are 2 small stature trees that would need to be removed as the result of this work, but there were no other foreseen challenges in terms of being able to maintain these trees.
Can you describe for me what you mean by small stature trees?
That's the information that was provided to me by the arborist. They are on the keynote plan in the back of your package in terms of location. But they are on the, call it the north side of the plan.
It's on page 5-10, but it says identified in red, and unfortunately we have black and white copies.
But again, generally speaking, I can't comment on what a small stature tree is. I don't know if you can, Steve.
Maybe Mr. Allen can.
Sorry, through you, Madam Chair. So there's 2 small stature trees that are coming out in the north end of the limits. And what we mean by small stature, there's something called an ivory silk. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's a smallish blossoming tree. But just to add some other information, there are 4 larger, I'd say medium-sized boulevard trees that will have to come out further to the south of there, and that's to accommodate the bike lanes. So the curb lines have to come out, and there's no way to maintain those.
Okay. The bike lanes are segregated, or are they painted?
They're painted. They're on-road painted bike lanes.
So we're having to widen the street to accommodate for the bike lanes? Is that my correct understanding?
Through you, Madam Chair, there's a number of factors at play here. One of the things that we did when we looked at this plan was the potential to widen to maintain parking on one side of the roadway. So in any residential neighborhood, if we can maintain parking on at least one side of the roadway while we still accommodate cycling facilities, that's the preferred approach.
Even though it means taking out some substantial trees?
Again, in terms of trade-off, it was looking at the potential of losing all of the parking in the neighborhood versus the trees that were defined.
So the road is not wide enough presently, although I've driven down it frequently, and it's a pretty wide street, but it's not wide enough to allow bike lanes on one side? What if we were to do bike lanes on one side?
Through you, Madam Chair, if we were to do bike lanes on one side, I mean, maybe there would be a potential to save the trees. I can't comment on that for sure without taking a greater look in the plan, but what that ends up doing is creating a disconnected cycling facility and not really providing that safe space. So I would recommend against looking at cycling facilities on one direction on one side of the roadway.
Mr. Reedman would like to add something.
Through the chair, so the current width of the road is 10.2 meters, so the cross-section being proposed is 12.1 meters, so it's 1.9 meters wider than the existing cross-section. In past designs, we've added a buffer to protect cyclists from parked cars in that area, so we would recommend the current design width. There is a school, an elementary school in the area. We know that about 20 to 25% of AM peak traffic is school-related traffic, so the intent of sidewalks and bike lanes, especially around school sites, is to try and reduce that drive-to-school traffic and promote walking and active transportation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, yeah. I'm
cue back in?
I will, thanks.
Councillor Marsh?
Thanks. I want to just follow up on the question about the number of properties that will come down to a one-car driveway. My understanding was that we have 4 homes that will be affected in this way. I'm wondering, would we be able to accommodate if they requested 2-car driveway to be able to provide for a widening of their existing driveways to allow to accommodate 2 cars side by side instead of in tandem?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. Yes, that's something we've done on other projects as well. We've widened out the driveways so you suddenly have space for 2 cars.
And is that something we would consider in this project if it were to go ahead?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, and so, and my other question was answered. I do want to point out, though, when my colleague said that 20% were in favor, therefore that means that 80% were opposed. I know very well that we all read the report, and him very, very well, that it's 64% that were opposed, and 16% were indifferent. But we all, you know, we can change the figures to our liking, but the figures are there.
Point of order.
Point of order.
Say 80% were opposed. I said 80% were not in favor. And that's the way we get all kinds of reports coming here. So I'm just using the same, so I didn't say opposed. So that's,
okay. Well, we can honestly, we can debate whether indifferent means in favor or opposed,
right. But we hear that all the time.
Yeah.
We hear those kind of quotes. Yeah.
We're not going to...
So I'm just following practice.
Okay.
Okay.
Up next...
But I do have another question.
Yeah. You're not next. Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Galloway, CELOC. Kind of further to Councillor Marsh's questioning on the parking. There are the homes that will go from a 4-car down to a 2-car and a 2-car down to a single-car parking situation in the driveway. Are we, as a city, able to do some sort of a special permitting option so those that would lose those could park on the street and have a permit that would allow them to park longer than the 3-hour bylaw limit?
Mr. Carmichael.
Through the chair, in response to that, we do have permit-only parking programs around our hospital areas. That's purely in reaction to the significant on-street parking that occurs in those hospital areas by visitors and employees of the hospitals. So the permit system has been put in place with support of those local residents, obviously, so they can still accommodate their visitors but not have to put up with hospital parking. In this specific case, I'd like to clarify that in no case are we taking anyone down to a 1-car driveway. Keep in mind that all homes are provided a parking space behind the building line, and the plan design will still accommodate a minimum of 1 space in front of the building, and correct me if I'm wrong there, Mr. Allen. So I would suggest that minimum each house will have two parking spaces. Now I'm rambling. I think I've finished my response. Thank you.
No, I just wonder if, I mean, there are situations now where adult children are living at home longer, and there are, sometimes 3 cars that need to be parked. So, if this does happen, that we could maybe consider special permits just for those directed properties, that we could give them that option, if that might be a possibility. You don't have to answer that today, but just putting it out there.
Okay, Councillor Davey.
Thank you. Just a question on, well, the first question, so the roadways being widened, is that purely to accommodate cycling?
That's correct.
Okay. So is the additional cost of widening the road, does that come out of the cycling master plan budget, or does that come from somewhere else?
Mr. Allen can confirm, but I believe it comes out of the engineering's reconstruction.
Through the chair, we haven't allocated funding from the cycling master plan for that. It's sort of a judgment call on whether it's just part of the rebuilding of the road or whether it should be coming from the cycling master plan. As an example, we're working on the design for Sterling Avenue at the Highland intersection, and that requires quite a bit of reworking of that intersection to accommodate bike lanes. For that one, we've allocated money from the cycling master plan.
Okay, so that's a bit of a concern of mine because council's constantly queried on the dollars that are allocated to cycling. So if I could, Madam Chair, just make 2 requests going forward. If possible, in the financial implications, I think it's really important that we see what the replace as is cost is, as well as the additional funding that comes that's going in that, because there's a significant amount of dollars, I imagine, going towards cycling here that's not being acknowledged or recognized, and that only serves to hurt us as a community. So if I could just add that, I'd appreciate it.
All right, Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, two quick questions. What if this project were not to be done for 10 years? What would happen?
I'm sorry, could you repeat?
What if this road replacement were not going to be done for another 10 years? What would happen?
Through you, Madam Chair, with any project on the 10-year capital forecast, we're doing it because of infrastructure that has generally reached the end of its life and it's prone to failure. So what happens is you increase your chances of catastrophic failure every year that you leave that pipe in the ground.
No, and I appreciate that. So what is the best guess that you could get out of this current situation?
Through the chair, as I mentioned, the reason it's on the forecast and being done is because it's identified as one of the highest priorities. So.
Okay, and fine. Again, I appreciate that, and you're doing the right thing. But let's just say if the scenario was that things were fine and it wouldn't be replaced until 10 years down the road, would we be likely to be doing anything at this point or not?
Through the chair, I think that's the fact that we're there doing the reconstruction has triggered a lot of other discussions about what the road should be. If there was no road reconstruction, I think there would still be a conversation about what we do with the cycling master plan and how we implement that, and whether now is the time to do it for Vanier outside of the reconstruction.
All right, thank you. Just okay, and I'm not sure who I'm to ask this question, but in dealing with it, I'm hearing that staff are going with the preferred position. My question is there any room for compromise with this project? Is there anything that can be done? Because I know that there's a large number of people that are directly affected that are opposed to it. So is there any room for compromise? And it fits in with my request to have it deferred until June the 25th. Is there room? Simple question, is there room for compromise?
Through you, Madam Chair, I think it really depends on the issue that we're talking about. So when so we'll talk about the sidewalk component first. Sidewalk infill in this instance is identified as a priority 1 with 85 points for reasons that we've already heard in terms of location to school and all these other pedestrian generators and the ION as well. So there is that component. Now the sidewalk piece doesn't necessarily impact where the curb line goes. And if you're talking about the width of the road, then that's what's really impacting, or the cycling facilities is what's really impacting the overall width of the road. In terms of potentially shaving off a little bit of distance and still being able to maintain that 10.2 meters, the only way to do that is by sacrificing the on-street parking.
I think ultimately it comes down to the buck stops with council, and we have policies that staff are implementing, and we have the ability to, as council or committee, to move and compromise within those policies.
That's fine. I'm asking staff because what comes here comes from staff, and rarely is it changed. So I'm asking them if there's room for compromise.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm hearing, I guess not. Is that what I'm hearing?
Through you, Madam Chair, when we're talking about the cycling facilities, I really do believe that the choice really comes down to whether or not we maintain any sort of parking. If council is willing to forego having parking along this stretch, then absolutely we can narrow the roadway back down to its original width. But if we decide to, the preferred alternative, again, as I said, was to maintain that parking in recognition that in terms of where we are as a society, people still tend to park on the roadway, at least during special events, holidays.
Yeah, excuse me for interrupting. But no, that when you talk about the parking, there might be a compromise, but that's the people that live on the street. They're the ones that should be talking about that first before council talks about it. So, and that's why I would like to see this deferred. Thank you. And incidentally, we don't agree often, but you people do an excellent job from your end of it. So, and I appreciate that.
Councillor Fernandez, is yours questions?
Yes. Thank you. In looking at this map, and I appreciate it being provided, I see two additional options for cycling routes. And as a cyclist, I know this is going to sound contrary to, what the cycling committee wants and what we've been talking about. But Kipling Avenue pretty much covers that entire stretch in connecting into Walton, and still would connect logically to the Ion station, which I believe was the discussion point earlier through Shelley Drive. Is that where the connection is hoped to go? For the Shelley Drive actually is quite past.
It comes out at Block Line.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, there are a number of connections that this facility could tie to. As Mr. Reedman mentioned earlier, there are the schools that they tie to. There are the parks that it ties to as well, and there's the pedestrian overpass across the expressway that it also ties to. No matter where you look on the map, whether it be Massey or Kipling, neither will be as direct as Vanier Drive. So as a cyclist, that's something to keep in mind.
I agree, it isn't as direct, but nevertheless, I don't think it's a significant distance as a cyclist. The delegation pointed out, interestingly enough, that the concern that we see all the time around schools with all the parking, and I would probably prefer my youngster to be traveling on a quieter street to school than Vanier, especially because I have seen them, even with the speed humps, really book it up to Walton, and then they're using it as a shortcut through Cortland. I'll be supporting the deferral because I think that there are a couple of alternatives here that for the cycling infrastructure that we might want to consider, especially because it does make a nice connection. At Massey Avenue, the dotted line, I'm assuming, is a connection to the trail in Wilson Park. Is that correct?
Through Madam Chair, yes, that's correct. That's the bridge that connects.
And Mr. Reedman would like to add something.
Through the chair, so I'd just like to add that the cycling master plan looked at all of the streets and looks at a network across the entire city, and it recommended Vanier Drive for cycling infrastructure, not the side streets in the area. Some other considerations for this committee are that Block Line connects over towards Vanier, so there will be an LRT stop there. Cyclists can take their bikes on that and then connect through to Vanier and connect over to the mall. The city is also working with the region of Waterloo on a walkway, a pedestrian cyclist crossing of the LRT corridor in the Vanier Trainer neighborhood, which this is a direct route for that as well. We know that Cortland Avenue is not friendly for cyclists, and people avoid that at all costs, and this is the most direct route along that same corridor.
I'm not going to disagree with you on that or discuss it, because I know that there is also an opportunity for the Canada Trans-Canada Trail also runs along Cortland. It's a little bit past this, but there is opportunity for cycling infrastructure there. Thank you.
Councillor Gazzola, I'm not coming back to you again for more questions. Okay. That's all the questions that we... I'm just closing the question period. I would rather not go around too much with regards to, because we have half an hour to deal with the last two items, and we're on a pretty tight timeline today with our evening schedule. So you can go ahead, Councillor Gazzola.
No, I just want to make a brief comment, okay? I cycle around there quite a bit, and when you're cycling, an area to come from is to be going over over the expressway, and you come out on Massey Ave. And when you come out on Massey, you tend to stay with Massey all the way down, and that gets you to wherever you're going. And when we're talking about direct links to the new LRT, I don't think it matters which one of these that you have. If you're a cyclist, you're going to be close to the LRT regardless of which street you're looking at. I'm trying to emphasize that there is room for compromise, and the buck does stop with council, and I would like to have council direct staff to see if there can be some compromise. That's all.
Okay, thank you. With that, there has been a deferral to the June 25th meeting. Recorded vote. Time out before Mr. Carmichael.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. Staff would like clarity on the purpose of this deferral and what will be expected of staff in that time, please.
My understanding is for you to go out and recirculate the letter and bring those results back to us. Redo the survey, yes. Councillor Marsh?
Before we vote, I have to say that regardless of whether this is deferred or not, I don't understand. I feel that there was not a technical challenge here. The staff did their job to go out and do the required consultation with the community. Staff have reported that we did have a decent response rate, and sidewalk infill is always a controversial one, and it's tough for people to accept the change. But I think that on the balance, when we are looking at our barrier-free pedestrian charter values, we need to ensure that we consider that each time we look at a sidewalk issue. When it comes to a cycling route that has been identified in the master plan, we absolutely need to increase our connective routes to make sure that cyclists have a way to get from point A to point B in a direct way, and I see this as a logical step, and so I'm not able to support the deferral at this time.
Councillor Davey?
So just a point of clarification, what exactly would be different in the survey, or are we talking about recirculating the exact same survey and expecting different results?
I think the expectation is that we would get more results.
More results, okay, thank you.
Okay. Is everyone good? All right, let's have the vote. It's for deferral to June the 25th. Yes, it's recorded. Yep. Voting's open. Those in favor? Those opposed? The deferral is defeated. We'll now go to the main motion. I don't even know if we had anybody. Did we have someone move it? Moved by Councillor Fernandez. I think we've had lots of dialogue on this. I'm just quickly going to say that irregardless if it's on Vanier or a different street, we're going to come across probably the same feedback from the community. We typically hear this type of feedback from the community. It's in our cycling master plan to move forward with this. We have a policy with regards to our sidewalk infill that we approved not that long ago. It's a priority 1 street. It's here because the road needs to be reconstructed. I think we need to proceed forward with this because we've been we've focused on these things. We've focused on a new sidewalk infill policy. We've focused on a cycling master plan. And now it's time that we proceed forward with that. I understand the residents aren't happy, but moving it to Kipling is not going to have the people in Kipling happy. And if we don't do the direct route, then we start getting into, it's going to cost us more money to build the same cycling lane or the same sidewalk that would have been done for less. We're going with the most direct route. So I'm assuming there's a recorded vote that is asked for on this. Councillor Gazzola? Are you commenting again? This is about the 5th or 6th time you've spoken on this item. Like, I've been pretty good at letting you speak longer, so do you have a short comment? Okay, go ahead.
I won't make many comments. I've made my comments. I want to compliment Councillor Fernandez, who is an avid cyclist and is on the cycling committee, and we've had many offline arguments already, and yet she is prepared to say, let's look and see if we can't find a compromise. But as so many other things, we're making a decision, staff bring forward a recommendation, council rubber stamps it, and the people out there say, what is the sense of becoming engaged? Because staff know what they're going to do, what they want to do, and that's what happens. So I'm sorry to see that. I will not be supporting the proposal before us. Thank you.
And I will rebuttal that we are far from rubber stamping this. I take offense that you suggest that this comes forward as a rubber stamp. Where I provide my input is through the sidewalk infill policy that we passed as a council not that long ago, and also with our cycling master plan. And that's what I come back to. And so I'm not rubber stamping anything. I heard what the residents said today. I'm still open to hear what the residents say when it comes forward to council. But as of right now, I'm not rubber stamping. I've heard what staff said, I've heard what residents said, and I'm making a decision based on what I feel is best for the city as a whole. And so using that type of language isn't something that I'm comfortable with. With that, the recorded vote's been called. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Like we said, it's going to come back in 1 week's time to council, so you're more than welcome to come back and bring some of your fellow residents with you. If you do speak again, you can't say the same things over again, but you are permitted to speak again at council. Okay? Thanks. Okay, we're going to move on to... We're going to move on to number 7 first, because we have a delegation here for number 7. And we'll move right to the delegation. So this is the Brownfield Remediation Program application for 1011 Homer Watson Boulevard. So we'll start with Mr. Craig Robson.
Good afternoon. Our firm acts on behalf of the owner of the former Frame Bud site, and I'd like to just express the fact that our client is in support of the staff report as written, and I was just asked to make that comment to you today. The project is pretty complex because of its size, brings some difficult timing issues forward because it's not often you find sites of this size that are going through these programs, and so it's required some flexibility. And I would like to thank staff of the city and the region for taking time to sit down with us, go through the intricacies of it, and to come up with solutions which are adapted to the large site and the complexity that it has. I'm available for any questions, but perhaps the staff are more informed about this than I.
Are there, Councillor Gazzola, you have a question of Mr. Robson?
No, I have a question of the staff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does anybody have questions of the delegation? No? Okay, thank you. If there happens to be one, we'll call you back up. But for now, we're going to move to questions of staff. Councillor Gazzola, you can go ahead.
Yeah. and at the appropriate time, it is in the ward that I represent, so I would like to move the recommendation. But I have a number of questions of staff. Do we have any choice here in going forward with this? Or is it according to a policy that, and all of the qualifications of the policy have been met, that we...
Mr. Morgan?
Through you, Madam Chair, this is a council policy program.
So it's pretty much a stated fact, and that we don't have any opportunity to change anything here. And not that I want to in this particular case, because I imagine that we have rules in play, and whoever's applying for it is applying for it based on those rules.
Through you, Madam Chair, that's correct.
Yeah, and that's fine. The reason I raise the issue is because I think it's a very good policy, and but I'm just wondering, and I've asked this on a number of occasions when this has come forward, as to whether we do re-examine, review our policy. And here again, because we're talking a substantial number of dollars that ultimately do impact our taxpayer. And I'm just wondering, is this ever reviewed? Is it possible to change anything, or what's the situation? I can see that in this particular case it is not. It's according to our rules, and the rules have been followed, and everything is as it should be.
Go ahead.
Through the chair, the program is set as it is now. I can advise that the region is undergoing a review of all their incentive programs at the moment. The Brownfield program being one of them. They're the largest share of this program, and once staff are made more aware, it's made more clear to the city what their proposal is, we'll likely go through a review of our own with our program and with their program in mind.
Okay, and that's fine. So hopefully down the road we'll have another opportunity to look at it and to look at where we're going, because we have a lot of properties, there's a lot of opportunities for this, and we need to look at it, but I would like to see us just review the program that we have in place to make sure that it's fair to everyone. The other question I have, and it's really part of the program that's in place, is there an external check on these amounts that we're dealing with? Is there an external check throughout the process on the expenditures that the applicant has run into? And this doesn't just, relate to this applicant, it relates to all of applicants for this program.
Through the chair, the short answer is yes, there is an external check. The region staff have an engineer on staff that reviews the invoices along with city staff and very closely to ensure that they're in keeping with the program and that they're eligible. Insofar as the regional development charge component of this program, a third-party audit is required of the invoicing.
Well, and that's what I thought, and I wondered why there wouldn't be a complete third-party audit required of the total expenditures for this program. Much similar to, I know there are cases when we as a municipality accept grants from senior levels of government that we sometimes have to provide a third-party review. But that's fine. At least you're looking at it, and we will get an opportunity to review it, hopefully down the road. So those are.
Councillor Singh?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not going to argue the points of the relevance of this program. I think the obvious benefits are very clear. So just ensuring that I understand, and for the record as well. Currently, the way the site has sat, in a state. The report outlines that the assessment was $8 million. Is that correct, the property assessment?
Through you, Madam Chair, that's correct.
And the city's portion that we were getting at that point was $40,000.
Correct.
And once now the development will be complete, the post-assessment will be in the range of $111 million. And the cities, once we can start collecting our taxes, once the TIG program is complete, we would be in the upwards to $800,000, possibly more based on future tax increments as well.
Through the chair, that's correct.
So from $40,000 to $800,000, and simply because we took a pause for approximately 6 years.
Correct.
Literally everything added up together with the city portion, we recovered in just a couple of years afterwards. Correct?
That's correct. Due to the size of the property, it's the numbers.
So those points alone speaks to the phenomenal benefit of this program. I'm glad staff are looking at it. I think we need to make it even more, incentivize it. And I've seen in the past, and looking back in the past as well, how sites sat for decades without any development potential because of the contamination. And it's incentives like these that do make development proceed forward, and we can collect taxes on those sites that are far more multiples than we do currently. I think the proof is in the numbers. Support this in the report.
Councillor Fernandez.
Not a question, just a request for a recorded vote on this, please.
Okay. Councillor Davey.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up as well. So, in terms of the cost to the city, really the cost to the city is just the foregoing of the taxes for the, it looks like 6 years maximum on this parcel. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's a phased TIG, so there's 11 components to that phasing, 11 blocks. The maximum payback period for any one of those blocks was 6 years, so you are correct in your statement.
Okay, so what this essentially means, and like I'll be clear that I love this program, I think it's great, is this is, with the Brownfield program, the gamble that you're making, and I don't think it's much of a gamble at all, and so is that if this property, the only way that we would get that money back, or a portion of that money back, is if somebody came in, acquired this property, cleaned it up out of their own pocket, and developed it to the same degree in less than the 6 year time frame.
Through you, Madam Chair, technically that's a correct statement, yes.
Okay, so that's the question we're really grappling with when we look at these brownfield programs. If you think that this property, someone's going to come in and clean it up and develop it in less than 6 years, vote against it. But I think we all know that's not going to happen.
Okay, that is all the questions. It's been moved by Councillor Gazzola and a recorded vote has been called. I don't see any comments. And that's carried unanimously. All right, we will go back to number 6. And we will deal with the community access bike share update and 2018 bike share pilot. Staff is just here to answer any questions we have on this. Councillor Fernandez.
Yeah, I'd be happy to move this at the appropriate time. I do have a couple of questions with regard to the pilot. I see we're sort of starting sort of slow and then building momentum. Is that what I'm understanding from this report?
Mr. Cronkite?
Through you, Madam Chair, we've had a pretty good relationship over the years with CAD, Community Access Bike Share. And essentially speaking, what Dropbox intends to do is come in and take over that existing envelope. So in terms of our existing bike share program, we'll have a very similar footprint. Once we've had the opportunity to conduct this pilot, we'll have a greater sense in terms of the data that program is able to collect, and it'll give us a better picture in terms of what bike share could look like going forward.
Okay. And have we had discussions around this new user, the drop bike? around putting something at the college, Conestoga College. I know CAB was talking about doing that, and I don't know if that got stalled because we're looking at this new program.
Through you, Madam Chair, we haven't identified any new locations through this. However, as part of the discussions with Drop Bike, one of the things to keep in mind is that these bikes themselves are a little bit different than CAB. So with CAB, they had to be returned to a specific station where these bikes don't have to do that. So if someone were to bike to Conestoga College, as an example, that bike can then be locked up in that location by one user and then turn around and be used by another user. So while there's no identified station there currently, I could anticipate bikes ending up there if necessary.
Okay. And one last question around the whole helmet use. They obviously won't be providing helmets at these stations, so it's sort of renter beware kind of scenario. Does that, because of our partnership, does that put us in a more liable situation, or is it?
Through you, Madam Chair, by using a private company, essentially speaking, all we're allowing that private company to do is operate within the confines of Kitchener. But keep in mind, no dissimilar to when you borrow someone's vehicle, when you use this kind of bike share program, it's the user that needs to follow the rules of the road. Obviously, helmet being one, but not riding on the sidewalk, all of the other laws that are applicable to cycling is really a user issue, and I wouldn't foresee any liability issues related to the city in that sense.
Okay. A comment, I would have appreciated seeing a map with the original CAB locations. I think that would have been interesting to see where they are throughout the city and throughout into Waterloo. I think that would have been very helpful. I certainly think $1 an hour is a pretty darn good bargain for an hour on a bike. You can travel pretty far and get a lot of errands done. So I'm excited about this. I know that the committee in general, I think the Cycling Advisory Committee, Cycling and Trails Advisory Committee were pretty enthusiastic about this moving forward. So thanks for bringing it to us today.
Councillor Gazzola?
Yeah, I was surprised that the other program has been in place for 6 years or so. But we don't seem to have much information on the success or the usage over that. Do we have any more information? You give some results here for 2017, and I would have been curious to see, how did that change from 2011 to 2012 to 2017? What has happened? What has been the uptake?
Through you, Madam Chair, I don't have that data with me, but it's something that we can certainly look at and provide to you as council if it's something that you're interested in.
Yeah, I would like to have seen more information. Now, you're really not asking council to do anything with this now because this is a private venture, and what is the involvement of what is the involvement of council in this whole situation? It's a private deal. We're not...
Through you, the chair, one of the things that we want to be very cognizant of in terms of moving forward with bike share is that we're putting the city and the region, for that matter, in the best position possible to succeed. So by executing and entering into the necessary agreement with Drop Bike, what we're doing is we're committing to a pilot with this company. There are other companies out there that provide similar services. And the last thing, there are examples where you could end up with a multitude of bike shares coming into a location at one time if we weren't to control it in some way, shape, or form. And that can ultimately be detrimental to a bike share program. So by entering into an agreement with one singular provider, it does a couple of things. It makes sure that issue doesn't occur. And at the same time, we're entering into an agreement with a company that collects that data that you're after. And so we'll be able to, again, use that data, look at the analysis, and figure out how best to use the system going forward. So I do think that there's a big benefit, actually, in terms of council endorsing this and having the city enter into an agreement.
Mr. Reedman would like to add something.
Through the chair, I do want to go back to the previous system. So we do know that there were a few issues with this system that is part of the reason why we're recommending doing a pilot with newer technology. One of them was the lack of GPS locations on the bike, so you actually had to get a physical key and unlock the bike. And some of those locations were based on hours of business, so it really limited people's use. And then the other aspect was locations where keys could be housed, so that limited the number of station areas. So we know that successful bike shares are based on having a density of stations that help support people getting to and from their home or other destinations. So part of this pilot is meant to collect that data so we have better information when we move forward through a full RFP process.
Continue.
Do we have the authority to license this the way we do other licenses? I'm just trying to figure out what authority we have. Or can some other organization come in the middle of summer and try to set up? What are we approving here?
Mr. Reedman?
Through the chair, so other municipalities have had that issue where companies have come in and just put bikes around the municipality. What we're hoping to do is with the dockless version, which is what this is, actually having an agreement with people, so they have to actually get an agreement from the city to be able to utilize docking areas in the city. So we would have control over that through almost like a leasing space rather than, or a permitting system rather than actually just putting in bikes. So some of the issues that other cities have had, like New York and other large cities, they don't have a permitting process in place, so that's what we're looking at utilizing through this process.
I understand what we're doing, but does this eliminate another organization from coming in and carrying on business? Do they need a license? That's how I'm asking. Is this a license that we issue? And if it is, how much do we charge for the license? Or is it, well, what exactly are we doing?
Through the chair, so that is essentially what we're doing, is a nominal fee for allowing licenses. So we're working with the region and the other municipalities on looking at what that fee is and how that structure works. So those details are being worked out with Drop Bike right now. Right now we're getting approval in principle from council to be able to move forward with the dockless system because we know other municipalities have had concerns with those types of systems.
I didn't understand it. Is it a fee? Was the nominal fee to allow them to park their bicycles in certain places, or is the nominal fee a license for them to operate this service in this community? What is the nominal fee for?
Through the chair, so we're sorting that out with the region and the other municipalities in tandem to these reports being approved. So we are looking at potentially a station fee because there are halo areas or haven areas that are painted bike station areas, or we're looking at the alternative is per bicycle permit fee. So we are working out that with the region, the other municipalities, and Drop Bike right now for this pilot.
So why don't we wait to approve it until you have everything worked out?
Through you, Madam Chair, part of the reason that we're trying to do this now, A, is that Drop Bike is currently working on an agreement with CAB to be able to take over their existing facility. But B, at the same time, if we wait and we work out what that nominal fee is, essentially what we'll end up doing is potentially losing an entire season of bike share. While it might not seem like a huge issue, keep in mind that there were 105 registered members with CAB, and that resulted in 2,200 bicycle trips in 2017. So if we wait to figure out what that nominal fee is, and by all means that fee will, in order to make a private business like this palatable, that fee will have to be very nominal. We essentially jeopardize losing a season, and up to 105 people that would have otherwise used bike share may choose to figure out a different way to commute and to get around in 2019 and beyond.
Okay, Councillor Gozol, if you have any more questions, I'm going to ask you to queue back in. Thank you. Councillor Marsh.
I take it this has been moved already?
It has been.
Okay. I'm excited about this pilot. Was it said already? Are we looking? Sorry if there's a feedback here. Do we know how many bikes we're going to be seeing brought in by Drop Bike?
It's in here. I'm just going to find it. Yeah. Through the chair, we do know what that number is. It is in the report. I'll find it.
Okay, I didn't see it. I know how many were in the CAB program because it's in the report. I want to know why is there so much feedback? I want to know why we aren't asking them to increase the number of stations, docking stations, because I think one of the disincentives for people to choose not to use the previous system was that there weren't enough places to put the bike back.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Mr. Cronkite.
Through the chair. So in terms of the first part, the cab bikes, and they had 80 bicycles. They're taking over roughly the same footprint. In terms of asking them to put in more stations, we could have that conversation. But the way this program started was Drop Bike approaching cab and asking to take over their existing footprint. At this point, Drop Bike is comfortable with that footprint and getting an understanding of what the market is like before they invest that much more heavily into the market. So keep in mind that this is something that is happening at no cost to the city, and each one of these bicycles is roughly $500 each that this company has to put forward without really having a good sense of what the market will generate for them. So they're putting in a certain amount of investment.
I wish them well, but I really don't think we're going to see it be super successful until we have volume of bikes and more locations throughout the cities, because it's just not attractive enough to make it viable, in my opinion. But anyway, that's just a comment. Thanks.
Mr. Reedman?
Through the chair, so Drop Bike did say they were open to providing more stations and more bikes through this pilot process. So they were starting with the base as the cab sort of base area, but they were amenable to adding more bikes to the system.
Councillor Gazzola.
How many docking stations were there previously?
Mr. Cronkite?
Through the chair, there were 9 docking stations previously under the cab system. Keep in mind that the Drop Bike system is a dockless system, so there will be the hubs that Mr. Reedman mentioned, but these bikes can essentially be placed anywhere.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I read that. How many stations were there before, did you say?
9.
9, okay. And I understood that these are dockless, they can be left anywhere. So, and is that the way it's going to work, or are they going to be directed towards central locations?
Through the chair, there will be central havens that the bikes are stored at traditionally, and those are the stations that you're looking at in terms of cab's previous footprint. Again, those bikes can, in theory, be housed anywhere, but they have, and I can't remember the term they use, but basically they have rovers that will go and collect bikes that haven't been used for a period of time and bring them back to those havens where people are anticipating generally to see those bicycles.
Yeah, but so there will be a certain number of central locations. Do we have any idea of what they're looking at?
Again, they're taking over, the intent is that they would take over cab's footprint, so they would begin with a minimum of those stations.
Those 9, okay, that's fine.
Mr. Reedman, did you have anything to add?
Through the chair, the only thing I was going to add is that, so Hamilton essentially has a dockless system, but they have bike racks that they utilize. So to park outside of those locations, it's $1 fee for the user, and then it's a 75-cent credit for somebody to pick up one of those bikes and bring it back into those stations. So there's a way to help manage the system based on sort of reward and penalty for not putting them back where they belong.
Okay, thank you. And with that, there's no more.
No, I'm not done.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were.
No. I want to ask you, I want to go back to why we're charging a nominal fee. We have a private sector operation here. Why wouldn't we charge them a appropriate fee, a market value fee?
Through the chair, firstly, market value is difficult to determine when you start talking about the public space that we're looking at. This isn't these stations aren't in traditional parking spaces or anything like that. They're in general unused right-of-way space, so very difficult to determine market value. The other thing to keep in mind is that CAB has been operating since 2011 as a not-for-profit and hasn't been able to generate any sort of revenue. Traditionally speaking, bike share isn't something that generates a whole lot of revenue. So for a company like Drop Bike or some of the other bike share companies that are out there, part of the reason that it can only be a nominal fee is because if we were to charge something that is greater than nominal, if we were to come up with a fair market value, there's very little likelihood that a bike share program could be successful. One of the things to keep in mind with a bike share program, it really does target that last mile. So we have transit, we have the ability to walk, we have the ability to move around. But when you want to choose to cycle, bike share, as an example, is a great. It's a great thing for tourism. But I don't know if any of you have had the chance to do this. But if you go into Toronto or even into Hamilton and choose to get around rather than hailing a taxi or using Uber or some other rideshare program, you can simply choose to use bike share. Those systems that are in Toronto, those systems that are in Hamilton, they don't generate revenue either, or if they do, it's very negligible. So we want to make sure that we set ourselves up for success. So if we start identifying what fair market value may be for these, I am fearful that we won't end up with a successful bike share.
I have used bike share in several Canadian cities. I'm well familiar with it and very supportive of it. But my last question is, you're talking about another in-depth study later on. What is that, and what is it costing, and what is involved with that?
Mr. Cronkite?
So the other study that you're referring to is a feasibility study that will occur basically after the pilot, in the sense that the pilot is really to feed into the feasibility study and determine some of the other questions that have already been asked in terms of, how many docking stations do we need, or havens do we need, what type of facility or type of bike share is best. So there's a docked type of system versus a dockless system, and which system suits this area the most, and where it footprint looks like in the region. That's all part of the feasibility study. The cost of the feasibility study is being funded primarily through a grant source through FCM.
Okay, that's the question I was asking you, though. Is the study that's going to take place is really a study of what has happened here in the region over the summer or over the whatever, right? That's what the study will deal with.
Essentially, yes. The study really is meant to determine what bike share should look like and how it can address our needs.
And what was the size of the grant that we're receiving to do this?
I don't have those numbers in front of me, but I can get back to you on that.
Thank you.
Okay, there's no further questions, and it's been moved. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And with that, we are all done community and infrastructure services. I remind everybody that we are now at just 10 minutes after 5. We have to be up at the cafeteria, I believe, by 5:30. So, or here.